I'm not the kind of person who believes in time loops or paranormal stuff. Actually, I'd never even heard of a glitch in the Matrix before this happened. It was a late Saturday night, technically Sunday morning, here at Hartman University, and I'd just staggered into the dorm lobby after hanging out with friends. The clock on the wall said 2:13 a.m., which seemed about right, because we usually wrap up by then. Normally, even at that hour, you'll hear some noise in the dorm. People chatting in the hallway, a TV left on, maybe someone microwaving pizza. But that night, it was strangely quiet. Every footstep I took echoed against the walls, making the place feel like a deserted building. I got to my room and found my roommate, Chris, already knocked out on his desk, face buried in a textbook. I tossed my jacket on a chair, checked my phone, and noticed the time, 2:13 a.m. again. I didn't think much of it and just plopped onto my bed, still wearing my jeans and everything. I fell asleep right away, but not for long. Something jolted me awake and I felt my heart racing. I glanced at my phone. 2:13 a.m. I immediately thought, that can't be right, because I was sure I'd been asleep for at least half an hour. Then Chris, without looking up, mumbled, "Late night, huh?" in this half-asleep tone. I just sort of grunted because, honestly, I was creeped out. The overhead light flickered a bit, but I shrugged it off. Maybe the bulb was going out. I tried to force myself back to sleep, but it happened again. I bolted upright, feeling like something was horribly wrong. Sure enough, my phone still read 2:13 a.m. This time, my jacket wasn't on the chair anymore. It was crumpled on the floor like someone had tossed it aside. Then, like clockwork, Chris mumbled, "Late night, huh?" but in the exact same voice as before. That's when my pulse started hammering. I wasn't about to believe it was all in my head. Needing some air, I went into the hallway, thinking maybe the dorm clocks would show something else. But they all said 2:13 too. The big one by the elevator, the one over the vending machines, everything was stuck. It was like the entire building was frozen in that minute, and I felt trapped in some bizarre loop. I headed to the communal lounge, hoping to see someone else awake. It was empty except for a flickering overhead light. On the table sat a half-eaten slice of pizza, still steaming like it just came out of the microwave. Nobody was there to claim it. That's when I started feeling like I wasn't alone, like eyes were on me from somewhere in the room. I backed away and nearly tripped over a random backpack that hadn't been there 2 seconds earlier. Panicked, I ran to the main doors, but they were locked. A sign read, "Building closed, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. My phone still said 2:13, no matter how many times I refreshed the screen. With no other option, I went back to my room. Chris was standing by the window, staring into the dark. He muttered, "Late night, huh?" again in this eerie, hollow voice. Then the overhead light shattered with a loud pop, spraying glass everywhere. A thin red drop landed near my shoe. Above me, a crack spread across the ceiling, like the building itself was fracturing. I saw Chris's textbook in the corner, pages torn and scrawled over with 2:13. In a frenzy, I grabbed my phone and tried calling campus security. The line crackled with static, then I heard a distorted echo of my own voice, like I was calling myself. A wave of nausea hit me, and I blacked out. When I came to, I was in the hallway again, holding my keys, staring at the lobby clock. It read 2:13 a.m., the exact moment I first walked in. The building was silent, and Chris was gone. But this time, something different happened. I heard the dull clank of the elevator doors opening. Cautiously, I crept over and stepped inside. The instant the doors slid shut, my phone screen finally changed to 2:14 a.m. I felt a heavy jolt, like we were dropping faster than normal. When the elevator doors reopened, it was morning, and the dorm lobby was buzzing with students. My phone read 8:07 a.m. The staff at the front desk looked at me strangely as I stumbled out, shaking and drenched in sweat. Chris was nowhere to be found, and nobody had any record of campus security receiving my call. To this day, I still can't explain why time froze at 2:13 a.m., but I've never experienced anything like it again. Sometimes, though, I wake up in the middle of the night, half expecting my phone to show that same cursed minute, waiting for reality to rewind on me once more.
I never thought I'd see my own face staring back at me from across a subway car, at least not on a poster or mirror, but on an actual person. Yet that's exactly what happened to me when I started working late shifts at the local insurance firm. My name is Maya, and I take the city's last train home almost every night. The first time it happened, I was completely exhausted. I remember slumping into a seat near the doors and resting my head against the window. The reflection of the train's fluorescent lights made it tough to see outside. That's when I noticed another passenger in the glass. Someone further down the car, wearing the same type of light gray blazer I had on. The hairstyle looked suspiciously like mine, too. I even blinked a few times to clear my vision, but it stayed there in the reflection. When I turned around, though, the seat was empty. Okay, I thought. Maybe I'm just sleep deprived. I quickly brushed it off. 2 nights later, I had to stay even later at work. By the time I boarded the subway, it was almost empty again. This time I sat in the middle of the car. My eyes started wandering, and once more I caught sight of someone who looked like me in the window's reflection. The figure sat in the far corner, motionless, with their hands folded. The moment I tried to look directly at them, the corner was vacant. It made my skin crawl. I tried telling a coworker about it the next day, but she laughed it off and said, "You're burning the candle at both ends." Maybe she was right. So I pushed it to the back of my mind. But on Friday night, things escalated. After a stressful week of deadlines, I boarded the nearly deserted train, wishing I could just teleport home. The ride was quiet until the overhead lights flickered. I felt that prickly sensation you get when you know you're not alone. Slowly, I lifted my eyes to the opposite end of the car, and my heart practically stopped. There I was, or at least someone who looked exactly like me. Same black hair, same gray blazer, even the same tired expression. But this time, she was facing me. And she was smirking. I was so rattled, I froze in my seat. The train jolted at the next station, and I lost sight of her for a second. When I looked back, she was gone. No footsteps, no doors opening, just vanished. I'll admit I was too scared to sleep that night. I kept replaying the moment in my head, trying to figure out if it was a trick of the light or if I was losing my mind. A friend suggested I skip the train and take a cab home, but cabs are expensive, and I wasn't about to let fear dictate my schedule. The following Monday, I stepped onto the train determined to confront whatever was happening. I sat down and stared at my own reflection, daring it to shift into that duplicate face. For a while, nothing happened. As we neared my stop, I exhaled in relief. Maybe it was all in my imagination. But just as the train slowed, the lights flickered again. In the reflection, I saw her materialize in the seat across the aisle. It was like watching myself appear out of thin air. My heart pounded so loudly I felt dizzy. Then she slowly turned her head and locked eyes with me. Her lips moved, but I heard no sound. Terrified, I bolted for the doors as soon as they opened. Stepping onto the platform, I glanced back and saw only an empty car. The figure was gone. The train pulled away, and a rush of cold air hit me. That was 2 weeks ago. I still take the subway, but I haven't seen my doppelganger since. Sometimes I catch myself staring too long at the windows, half expecting to see her lurking in the reflection. Even though she's disappeared, I can't shake the feeling that one day, I'll look up and see my own face staring back at me again. But for now, at least, it's over.
I've never been much of a morning person, but my phone changed all that in one terrifying week. My name's Jordan, and I work as a freelance graphic designer. My schedule's all over the place, so I rely heavily on my phone's calendar. I'm always checking dates, deadlines, and reminders. That's how this whole nightmare began. It started on a Thursday evening when I got a text that read, "Break up tonight, 9:10 p.m. It came from an unknown number. I rolled my eyes at first, thinking it was spam. But the timestamp on the message showed Friday's date. I double-checked the calendar. It was still Thursday. Creepy, right? I tried replying, but the number just bounced back. Out of curiosity, I looked at the clock. It was 8:45 p.m. That's when I got a call from my best friend Naomi, who was sobbing uncontrollably. She'd just been dumped out of the blue, and it happened around 9:10 p.m. My blood ran cold. The next day, I was too spooked to do much work. I told Naomi about the weird text, but she was too upset about her breakup to really process it. Later that evening, another text arrived from the same unknown number. This time it said, "Fender bender outside your building, 5:30 p.m. Minor injuries only." Once again, the date on the text was listed as if it came from the next day, Saturday. I decided to test this bizarre phenomenon. At 5:25 p.m., I parked myself by the window in my living room, which overlooks the street in front of my apartment. Sure enough, around 5:30 p.m., a sedan and a minivan bumped into each other at the stop sign. The drivers got out, started arguing, and it looked like nobody was seriously hurt, exactly as predicted. By now, I was half terrified, half fascinated. Part of me wanted to use this strange ability to foresee events. But when the next text arrived, it said, "Urgent client meltdown, Sunday, 2 p.m. You can stop it." My stomach churned. I had a big client named Robert who was known for sudden freakouts over deadlines. Feeling emboldened, I spent all Saturday polishing up Robert's project. My plan was to deliver the files early Sunday morning, so there'd be nothing to complain about. Come Sunday at 2 p.m., I expected a meltdown that wouldn't happen because I'd already handled the problem. But at exactly 2 p.m., I received a frantic call from Robert. His entire system had crashed, and the files were corrupted. My early delivery didn't matter. He still blew up at me. I realized that trying to prevent these events might just make them happen in a different way. The final text I got took things to a darker place. Loss in the family, Monday, 10:12 p.m. My heart practically stopped. My grandma had been ill for a while, and I feared the worst. I rushed to her house Monday afternoon, determined to keep her company. I thought if I was by her side, I could stop fate from happening. I spent the day with her, comforting her, and by 10 p.m., she was resting peacefully. I felt relieved, thinking maybe I'd beaten the prediction. But at 10:12 p.m. on the dot, my phone chimed. The message read, "There's no escape." My mom suddenly called. She'd found our old family cat unresponsive. I know it might sound silly, but we'd had that cat for a decade, and losing him felt like a part of our family was gone. After that night, the unknown number disappeared from my phone logs. No more texts. I never did figure out who or what was sending those messages. But one thing I learned is that trying to outsmart fate can have a twisted way of reinforcing it. Some events, it seems, are just meant to happen, no matter what warnings we get in advance.
I remember my high school senior year as a blur of exams and late-night hangouts with friends. But the highlight, as far as I knew, was this so-called legendary party we threw after finals. We joked about it for years, so when our old group met up at Chris's family cabin for a reunion, I naturally brought it up. That's when Nadia's face went pale, and she insisted there had been no such party. The rest of us clearly recalled the same night. Tacky decorations, strobe lights, and a sudden thunderstorm knocking out the power. Nadia, however, swore she spent that weekend with her grandmother in the hospital. At first, we thought she was messing with us, but her seriousness soon killed the laughter in the room. Determined to prove our memories right, we pulled out an old yearbook. We found a section labeled "Snowed Out Winter Formal," yet the photos showed something more like a rowdy indoor party. Another strange detail, the date listed was March 12th, supposedly canceled due to a blizzard. None of that matched the warm weather scenes in the pictures. We argued for hours. 5 of us were positive the party happened, down to the color of the streamers and the music playlist. Nadia insisted we'd mixed up different events. She pointed to a smudged block of text that offered no real explanation. And the background in those photos looked suspiciously like a warehouse, not our school gym. Hoping to settle the confusion, Marcus checked his old phone backups. He found a single image labeled Senior Bash, timestamped 11:59 p.m., but with no date. It showed me, Chris, and Nadia behind us. The catch? Nadia was adamant she was never there. Right at that moment, the cabin's lights flickered, giving us all a chill. I tried to shrug off my nerves, but a nagging sense of dread stuck with me. After all, I still own a red hoodie with a soda stain from that night. Or so I've always believed. But Nadia told me, quite bluntly, that I was making it up. The tension got so thick that we decided to drive home early. Nobody was in the mood to keep debating our twisted high school memories. Once I got back to my apartment, I started digging through my old photo albums. Prom, graduation, and field trips were all there, yet not a single picture of this legendary party. Eventually, I found a lone Polaroid sandwiched behind another photo. It showed Marcus and me laughing near a snack table with Nadia in the background. The date along the edge read March 12th. According to official school records, though, the winter formal was canceled on March 12th due to a blizzard. I texted Nadia a snapshot of the Polaroid, but she never replied. An hour later, the digital image vanished from my phone's gallery. The Polaroid was still in my hand, but it felt like it might dissolve any second. When I asked my parents about that weekend, they insisted I stayed home during the snowstorm, that there was no party. I can't explain it. On one side, there's Nadia and the school's official cancellation note. On the other, there's this photo and my own vivid memory. Was it a glitch in reality or some weird shared hallucination? All I know is, the deeper we dig, the more confusing it gets. That party either happened or it didn't, and we're stuck in between, with half our evidence disappearing into thin air. Even now, every time I see that red-stained hoodie, I get a chill. Maybe it's proof, or maybe it's just another puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit. Whatever the truth is, it seems determined to stay hidden.
I've been working at my company's downtown office for almost 3 years. I know every hallway, every fire escape, and every elevator like the back of my hand. Or at least I thought I did. One late evening changed all that. Now, I'm not so certain this building follows the normal rules of reality. It happened on a Tuesday. I was working on a project due first thing Wednesday morning, so I stayed until nearly midnight. By the time I shut down my computer, most of the lights on our floor were off. Only the emergency bulbs glowed faintly, giving the place an eerie vibe. But I told myself I'd be fine. After all, I'd stayed late before. My usual path to leave the office is straightforward. Turn right from my cubicle, past the break room, and exit through the double doors into the main lobby. But that night, as I approached the doors, I stopped in my tracks. Instead of the lobby, there was a long corridor stretching out beyond the threshold. It looked brand new, with plain white walls and motion sensor lights that flickered on in sequence, beckoning me forward. For a moment, I just stood there, absolutely puzzled. Our office is on the 16th floor, and I knew for a fact there wasn't any new construction going on. Despite every instinct telling me to turn around, I stepped into this corridor, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of a feeling that I was half dreaming. The corridor seemed to lead to another row of offices, all with matching gray doors. I tried the first door, but it was locked. The second door opened into an empty conference room with a single long table. No chairs, no decorations, nothing. Just pale fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. When I went back into the corridor, the door clicked shut behind me. I walked a bit farther and the hallway turned left, then left again, like a square spiral. At each corner I heard faint footsteps echoing, but I never saw anyone. My heart raced. I tried to backtrack to the door I'd come through, but the corridor seemed to have changed shape. Instead of leading me to the conference room, the hallway curved right and opened into a different space. It was another empty room, this time with a massive window facing a black void. I couldn't see any city lights or other buildings, just pitch darkness, like we were floating in space. My stomach dropped. Nothing about this made sense. I hurried back into the hallway, determined to find a real exit. As I picked up my pace, the lights started flickering more rapidly, as though they were struggling to stay on. My reflection in the polished floor tiles looked warped and stretched. That's when I realized I could feel the building itself vibrating, almost like it was breathing. Finally, I spotted what looked like a fire exit sign glowing at the end of the corridor. I ran toward it, my footsteps echoing so loudly it sounded like a stampede. When I opened the door, I found myself stepping into the main lobby of my office, exactly where I should have been in the first place. The normal late-night security guard was there, half asleep at his desk. He jolted awake when I burst in, panting and disheveled. I asked him if there were any renovations on the 16th floor. He just looked at me blankly and shook his head. I raced upstairs to double check, but the corridor was gone. The double doors led straight to the usual hallway, with the same worn-out carpet and outdated motivational posters. To this day, I have no idea where that corridor came from or how it disappeared. Sometimes, when I work late, I'll linger by those doors, half expecting them to reveal that strange passage again. It hasn't shown up since, and maybe that's for the best. But a small part of me wonders if one night it'll return, waiting for me to wander in once more.